Ever wondered if Henry VIII was the original influencer of Eat, Pray, Love? Well, he certainly had his own version: Eat, Marry, Behead. Let's turn the pages of history back to the early 16th century, to the reign of the man who wasn't just a king, but a phenomenon. Henry VIII, the King of England, who had an appetite larger than the kingdom he ruled, not just for the grand feasts he was famous for, but also for love and power. His reign, marked by political and religious upheaval, saw the establishment of the Church of England, a move as revolutionary as his many marriages. His life was a medley of love, lust, power and faith, with each element as potent as the other. His influence was such that England was never the same after his reign. So let's delve into the life of this larger-than-life king, starting with his first wife. Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, the original Queen Bee, but unfortunately for her, Bee didn't stand for beloved for long. Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess, was originally married to Henry's older brother Arthur, who died young. This left Catherine, the convenient widow, to be wed to Henry. They tied the knot in an opulent ceremony in 1509, setting the stage for a union that would span over 2 decades. The couple had a daughter, Mary, but this wasn't enough for Henry, who was desperate for a male heir to secure the Tudor dynasty. Henry, ever the romantic, grew dissatisfied with their marriage. The lack of a son started to eat away at him, like a worm in an otherwise perfectly good apple. With every passing year of their marriage, his desire for a son grew more fervent. This, coupled with Catherine's advancing age, put a strain on their relationship. As the years rolled on, Catherine found herself more and more in the shadow of her once doting husband. And then it happened. Henry, who was never a man of much patience, began to look elsewhere for the succulent fruit he so desired. Catherine, once the apple of his eye, was now just the core. And so Catherine was cast aside, making way for wife number 2. Enter Anne Boleyn, the tart that Henry couldn't resist. Or should we say the mother of the Queen he couldn't foresee. As the story goes, Anne was a woman of great charm, wit and intelligence. She was a magnet that drew Henry in, much like a moth to a flame that would eventually consume them both. Now, Anne wasn't initially wooed by the king's affections. In fact, she played hard to get, a strategy that seemed to work wonders on our dear Henry. But as they say, the course of true love never did run smooth. And so in the shadows of the court, Henry and Anne tied the knot in secret. The king, never one for subtlety, then decided to break away from the Catholic Church to validate their marriage. Ah, the things one does for love or lust. In time, Anne gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth. Though Henry was hoping for a son, little did he know that this red-haired infant would grow up to be one of England's most iconic monarchs. The irony, it's deliciously rich, isn't it? But alas, the sweet tartness of Anne began to sour in Henry's mouth. Accusations of adultery, witchcraft, and even incest were thrown at her. It seems our king had a rather vivid imagination when it came to reasons for annulment. And then came the tragic end. Anne, once the apple of Henry's eye, was now facing the executioner's block. The king's roving eye had moved on, and Anne was left to pay the price. In one swift move, the axe fell, and Anne Boleyn, the Queen of England, was no more. So there you have it, the tale of Henry and Anne, a story of passion, power, and a pie that left a bitter aftertaste. And just like that, Anne lost her head and Henry was on to wife number 3. But that's a story for another time, isn't it? Jane Seymour, the sweet shortcake of Henry's life. Short because their marriage lasted just a year. Now, Jane was a unique blend of sweetness and subtlety, a comforting presence after the tumultuous tart that was Anne Boleyn. Jane and Henry tied the knot in May of 1536, just a day after Anne's execution. Talk about a quick turnover. But their union was not long for this world. Jane was destined to be a comet in Henry's life, bright, beautiful, and tragically brief. In October of 1537, Jane gave birth to Edward VI, Henry's long-awaited male heir. But this joyous occasion was marred by tragedy. Jane fell ill shortly after childbirth, a common enough occurrence in those days, but deadly nonetheless. Despite the best efforts of the royal physicians, Jane passed away just 2 weeks after giving birth. Henry was genuinely heartbroken. A rare show of emotion from a man known more for his appetites than his affections. He even went into mourning, a period of isolation and reflection that lasted a full 2 years. Jane Seymour, the sweet shortcake, had left a lasting impression on Henry. She was the only wife he would choose to be buried next to, a testament to the depth of his affection. But as we know, Henry's appetite for wives was insatiable, so on to number 4. Anne of Cleves, the wife who was served but never tasted, or in Henry's words, the Flanders mare. Well, folks, let's dig into this unappetizing dish, shall we? Anne of Cleves was a political pawn in a lavish game of chess. Daughter of a German duke, she was served to Henry on a silver platter of political alliance. But alas, the dish didn't quite please the king's palate. In fact, he found her rather unpalatable. Not quite the tempting tart he'd been expecting. Now, Henry was no stranger to love at first sight, but with Anne, it was quite the opposite. It was distaste at first sight. He found her so unappealing he couldn't even consummate their marriage. Talk about a royal letdown. And so, within 6 months, the wedded bliss was over. The king couldn't stomach his German dish any longer. He had his marriage to Anne annulled, citing non-consummation and pre-contract to another man. Quite the clever move, don't you think? But as bitter as the dish was, Anne was no fool. She accepted the annulment, took her generous settlement, and lived out her days in comfortable obscurity. A far better fate than some of Henry's other wives, wouldn't you agree? And just like that, Anne was out and Catherine was in. Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr, the final courses in Henry's marital feast. One was too hot to handle, and the other just right. Catherine Howard, the 5th wife, was like a spicy dish that left Henry's palate scorched. A young, vivacious woman, Catherine brought a zest to Henry's life. But alas, her fiery spirit was her downfall. Accused of adultery, Catherine was served the same fate as Anne Boleyn. She was executed in 1542, a mere year and a half into their marriage. Her story serves as a poignant reminder that in Henry's court, even the most exotic of dishes could turn bitter. Now, on to the final course, a palate cleanser, if you will. Catherine Parr, a widow twice over before marrying Henry, was the perfect antidote to the king's tumultuous love life. She was a woman of intellect and grace, known for her nurturing nature. Catherine managed to bring a sense of calm and stability to the chaotic court, and most importantly, she survived Henry. Catherine Parr was the first Queen of England to publish under her own name, making her a pioneer for women of her time. She was a woman of considerable influence, even serving as regent while Henry was on a military campaign. Her reign as queen was marked by her efforts to reconcile the king with his estranged daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. Despite the many trials and tribulations, Catherine Parr outlived Henry, a feat none of his previous wives managed to achieve. After Henry's death, she remarried, only to die a year later during childbirth. In the grand spectacle of Henry's marital banquet, Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr were the final courses. They were as different as chalk and cheese, yet both played a significant role in shaping the king's reign and legacy. And with that, Henry's reign of love, food and power came to an end. So, there you have it, the story of Henry VIII, a king with an appetite for more than just food. From his reign that spanned nearly 4 decades to his intriguing marital menu of 6 wives, each adding a unique flavour to the feast. Catherine of Aragon, the starter; Anne Boleyn, the tempting tart; Jane Seymour, the sweet shortcake; Anne of Cleves, the unappetizing dish; Catherine Howard, the risky roulette; and Catherine Parr, the dessert that lasted. And remember, while Henry VIII may have had 6 wives, at least he never had to remember more than 3 anniversaries at a time. Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting facts and stories. But before we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on the legacy of Henry VIII. His reign was marked by significant political and religious upheaval, and his decisions shaped the course of England's history. Henry's insatiable appetite extended to his ambitions, leading to the formation of the Church of England, forever altering the religious landscape of the country. His legacy is a mixed dish, with a taste of power, reform, and controversy. So, the next time you sit down to a feast, remember the king of appetite and aesthetics, and how his hunger for power, love, and change left a lasting impact on England. And as we leave the banquet hall, let's raise a toast to the intriguing tales of history that continue to fascinate us. Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting facts about history's most intriguing figures. Until the next feast, bon appétit! If you've enjoyed this feast of facts and find your appetite whetted for more, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Our kitchen is always cooking up more delicious bites of history, and we'd love to have you at our table. Next on the menu, we're diving into the dramatic stories of Joan of Arc, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Cleopatra. So, if you're hungry for more fascinating tales from the past, you won't want to miss out. Stay tuned for more delicious bites of history, and until our next feast, keep feeding your curiosity.